Lesson six, the fall of the Roman Empire. And today, what goes up must come down. So, Rome is going to end here shortly. So, again, we're going to be talking about culture and how it impacts other societies and the causes and effects that go into all this Roman history stuff. So, here is where we last left off. So, Roman Empire is going to grow to its height right in the start of the fourth period of expansion. And that's when it's also going to start meeting its demise. So the Roman Empire is going to have some problems basically with leadership. Anybody that had a large following and basically had a wild hair is going to try to become emperor of Rome. So with political instability, that's going to be a problem in terms of longevity, being around for a while. And historians have narrowed it down to four causes that brought about the end of the Roman Empire. And they're going to be military causes, political causes, economic causes, and social causes. So there's actually a really good chart from one of the textbooks that we use that shows each one point blank. So instead of me retyping it, I'm just going to move the arrow across the board here shortly, but I'm going to talk about the political ones. So again, where everybody had a lot of pride in serving inside of the Roman government, it's no longer the case anymore. And all the while, again, the people that are constantly overthrowing the emperor, are usually military generals. Sorry, can't talk apparently. But also, you're going to notice that that is going to be seen as a civil war. So again, people are going to be divided in who to follow and who to back because people are going to align themselves to different generals as well. And then all the while, Rome is going to be split. It basically, an emperor is going to say, Constantine, if you will, is going to say, this is way too big, and it's going to split to east and west. So the west side of Rome is actually going to be still called Rome, and then the east side is going to be called the Byzantine Empire, and it's actually going to go on for another 1,000 years after it splits. So even after the west side of Rome falls. So that's kind of a big deal. So when Rome split, how did they divide? I said it. I didn't put it in the, it's not in the chart. So going into the social side, again, it kind of branches off of this, but seen as a burden, you're going to notice that people just didn't have an interest. They just basically lived their life, I guess you would say. They really didn't have a whole lot of allegiance to the empire, if you will, which then returned to people just stopped caring. They didn't really have a confidence in what was going on, which then leads to disloyalty or a lack of patriotism. When you don't have pride in what you're doing, you're basically fighting a losing battle. No problem. So the contrast between the rich and the poor, you're going to notice that people are going to get super duper rich and people are going to be super duper poor based on other things I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. But then again, famines were happening. Their harvest was bad because people just would over farm the land over and over and over, which I'll talk about a little bit more over here, and it basically kill off the soil. And all the while, all these soldiers, which I'm going to talk about over here, are going to be promised certain lands when they retire. And they're going to be taking land from farmers, and they don't really want to grow anything. So that's going to kind of leave a food shortage, if you will. So, true or false, the people of the Roman Empire were losing their sense of nationalism or patriotism. All right, moving right along, the economic reasons. So I talked about the poor harvest before, talking about basically they weren't producing enough food for their ginormous empire. But then also there's going to be a disruption in trade. So all these outsiders are actually going to start looting people, they're going to start robbing people, and then since they don't really have a huge army anymore, which I'll talk about over here, that's not going to go over very well. Nobody's going to basically get their back. There's no more war plunder. So I talked about this before in the periods of expansion. When you take over a new land, you get their stuff. Well, they weren't taking over anybody anymore, so they weren't getting their stuff. And with that, they're going to put less and less silver and gold inside of the coinage, the currency of Rome. So, since there's less of an actual valuable metal inside the coin, that's going to cause inflation or prices are going to go up. But the problem is, people are still being paid the same amount that they were before. So, when the price of things go up, and the wages do not go up, that is a problem. And that's actually going to lead to a lot of economic instability, clearly. But then you're also going to notice that people are being overtaxed because something I'm going to talk about over here. When people don't want to fight for their country anymore, you got to hire out. You need to hire what's called missionaries to do your bidding, and they're being paid by tax money. And I already talked about the wage gap between the rich and the poor. So you're going to notice again, falls in here. So when the prices of goods go up and the wages stay the same, this is called what? And then lastly, the military. So then the military side of things, again, you're going to notice that they didn't have a whole lot of money to hire all of the Roman citizens, or sorry, the non-Roman citizens to fight inside this military. So a lot of this is kind of like a domino effect of things. So one I didn't mention up here, but there's going to be a group of people inside of Germany, today's Germany, that's going to be invading from the north, and they're actually called the Huns. So there's going to be this guy called Attila the Hun. He is probably the meanest of the meanest. Google him. He is an interesting dude. But again, kind of stemming back here, when there's a lack of patriotism and people don't want to join the army, you're basically vulnerable and you can't be big and bad forever if you don't have a military to back it up. So all of these kind of acting over the course of 100, 150, maybe 200 years are going to eventually lead to eventually the fall of Rome. So, true or false? Towards the end, the Roman citizens were mostly skill making up their army. Wow. Let me rephrase this. So, towards the end, Roman citizens were mostly still making up their army.